In 1940, as Nazi bombs rained on London, a British aviation designer named Geoffrey de Havilland pitched an idea so radical it bordered on madness. Build a bomber with no armor, no guns, and a fuselage made of wood. The Air Ministry laughed, but de Havilland persisted, and in doing so created the most audacious war machine of World War II, the de Havilland Mosquito. Welcome to Historical Digs, where we unearth the untold tales of history's most ingenious machines. While Allied bombers packed turrets and armor plate, the Mosquito stripped them away. Its plywood frame, glued together by furniture makers, weighed half as much as a B-17. Its twin Rolls-Royce Merlin engines propelled it to 400 miles per hour, faster than any German fighter, and its crews flew into battle armed with nothing but speed, skill, and sheer audacity. The Mosquito shouldn't have worked, but it did, rewriting the rules of aerial warfare forever. The wooden wonder's impossible design. The Mosquito's birth was less a design process than a mutiny. In 1938, as Europe hurtled toward war, Geoffrey de Havilland proposed a bomber so radical it defied every military orthodoxy. The Air Ministry demanded heavy armor, gun turrets, and a metal airframe. De Havilland countered with plywood. His team envisioned a plane built like a racing yacht, lean, unarmed, and blisteringly fast. Officials dismissed it as suicidal. But de Havilland, a veteran of World War I's aerial slaughter, knew the truth. Survival wasn't about armor, it was about speed. His team gambled on a revolutionary monocoque fuselage, molded from layers of Ecuadorian balsa wood sandwiched between Canadian birch ply. The result? A frame 80% lighter than aluminum, yet strong enough to withstand 400-mile-per-hour dives. Workers glued it together with aerolite, a formaldehyde resin so potent it bonded wood fibers tighter than steel rivets. Cabinet makers from High Wycombe furniture factories shaped the wings, while piano craftsmen at AM Lock & Co. carved the fuselage. This was industrial alchemy at work. When the prototype soared in November 1940, even skeptics gasped. The Mosquito hit 392 miles per hour, 50 miles faster than the Spitfire, while carrying a 4,000-pound payload. Engineers discovered Wood's hidden superpower: flexibility. Metal airframes cracked under stress, the Mosquito's plywood skeleton bent like a bow, dissipating G-forces and flak damage. Test pilots reported surviving mid-air collisions that would have sheared metal planes in half. The Luftwaffe's response was a mix of mockery and dread. German intelligence dubbed it the Mosquito Plane, a pest too insignificant to fear. They didn't grasp the irony. By 1942, the Mosquito was rolling off production lines in ice rinks, churches, and even a former margarine factory. De Havilland had turned Britain's furniture industry into a war machine, one the Nazis couldn't bomb because they couldn't find it. Precision over power. The Mosquito redefined bombing not by dropping more explosives, but by dropping them exactly. While Allied heavy bombers carpet-blasted cities, the Mosquito flew solo, skimming treetops at 300 miles per hour to strike with sniper-like precision. Its first target? The Gestapo's nerve center in Oslo. On September 25, 1942, 6 Mosquitoes of No. 105 Squadron streaked through the North Sea at wave-top height, radar altimeters humming. Avoiding detection by flying below German radar, they reached Oslo undetected. With no bomb sights, too heavy for the stripped-down airframe, pilots relied on stopwatches and gut instinct. At 12:03 p.m., they released their payloads. 4 500-pound bombs punched through the Gestapo headquarters roof, detonating in the archive room holding files on 50,000 Norwegians. The blast incinerated occupation records, not civilians. All 6 Mosquitoes escaped unscathed. This raid became the blueprint. In January 1943, Mosquitoes destroyed a Berlin radio station mid-broadcast, timing the strike to interrupt Goering's speech. In April, they breached the Philips radio factory in Eindhoven, wrecking Nazi radar production without flattening the town. Their secret? A 20-minute mission profile. Scream in, strike, vanish before fighters scrambled. But their masterpiece came on February 18, 1944, Operation Jericho. To free resistance fighters facing execution at Amiens Prison, 19 Mosquitoes raced across the channel at 50 feet, navigators counting fence posts to find the target. At 12:03 p.m., the first bombs cracked the prison's outer walls. The second wave struck the guards' barracks. The third blew open cell blocks. Of 258 prisoners, 255 survived. One pilot, his Mosquito wing shredded by debris, landed with a single engine and a fuselage bristling with fence splinters. The Mosquito didn't just bomb targets, it humiliated them. As a Luftwaffe colonel lamented post-war, you couldn't flak what you couldn't catch, and you couldn't catch that. The hunter becomes the hunted. The Mosquito's greatest trick wasn't evading death, it was dealing it. By 1943, the Wooden Wonder had a new mission, hunting the hunters. Converted into a night fighter, the Mosquito FB-6 bristled with four 20mm Hispano cannons and an AI Mark IV radar that turned the blackest night into a shooting gallery. Its prey? Luftwaffe bombers, V-1 rockets, and even the vaunted Me-262 jet. The shift from prey to predator began over the skies of Berlin. German bombers, emboldened by darkness, raided British cities with near impunity until the Mosquito arrived. Its radar operator, hunched over a flickering CRT screen, guided pilots to targets invisible to the naked eye. On January 30th, 1944, a Mosquito of No. 85 Squadron intercepted a Heinkel HE-177 over London. Closing at 400 miles per hour, pilot John Cunningham fired a half-second burst. The Heinkel erupted in flames, its crew never hearing the attack. By 1945, Mosquito night fighters had claimed 600 kills, including 257 during the Baby Blitz alone. But the Mosquito's deadliest game was stalking the V-1 Doodlebug. These pilotless rockets hurtling toward London at 400 miles per hour seemed unstoppable, until Mosquito pilots devised a macabre ballet. Flying alongside the V-1, they'd match its speed, nudging the wingtip with their own and tip it into the channel. Flight Lieutenant Joseph Barry perfected this tactic, downing 59 V-1s. It was like playing chicken with a robot, he later said. The ultimate test came in March 1945 when a Mosquito intercepted an Me-262 jet over Munich. The German pilot, confident in his 540 mph speed, didn't expect the Mosquito to dive from 30,000 feet, cannons blazing. A 20mm shell severed the Me-262's fuel line, sending it spiraling. The Luftwaffe's wonder weapon had met its match in a plane made of glue and sawdust. Legacy of the unkillable. The Mosquito's final insult to logic? Its survivability. Of 7,781 built, only 254 were lost in combat, a 3% loss rate, dwarfing the Lancaster's 12% and the B-17's 25%. Crews called it the unkillable plane, and the numbers proved it. A Mosquito could return with a wingtip sheared off, engines trailing smoke, and still land smoothly. One aircraft hit by flak over Cologne flew home with a 3-foot hole in its tail. The repair took 18 hours, and it flew 37 more missions. Post-war, the Mosquito refused to fade. It mapped the Amazon rainforest, chased Soviet submarines, and even starred in films. BOAC converted it into a luxury airliner, ferrying VIPs at 425 miles per hour, faster than any contemporary passenger plane. But its true legacy is in its DNA. The US copied its wooden construction for the Hughes H-4 Hercules, while British engineers recycled its design principles for the Comet, the world's first jet airliner. Most crucially, the Mosquito birthed the speed is armor doctrine. The F-104 Starfighter, SR-71 Blackbird, and even stealth bombers owe their philosophy to de Havilland's gamble. As Lockheed's Kelly Johnson, father of the SR-71, admitted, the Mosquito taught us that outrunning bullets beats stopping them. Yet, the ultimate tribute came from its enemies. In 1945, captured Luftwaffe engineers were shown a Mosquito. After inspecting its plywood frame, one muttered, "We could have built this in toy factories. Why didn't we?" The answer? They'd forgotten how to think small. What if the Mosquito had failed? The Mosquito's success was never guaranteed. In 1940, the Air Ministry nearly cancelled it twice. Bureaucrats called it a harebrained folly. Even Churchill wavered, demanding, "Why are we wasting resources on a wooden toy?" Had the naysayers won, World War II's aerial chessboard would have collapsed into chaos. Here's why. The Mosquito's reconnaissance variants mapped Normandy's beaches with photographic precision. Flying unarmed at 30,000 feet, they captured images so detailed, planners could count German tank tracks in the sand. Without these maps, the Allied would have stormed Omaha Beach blind to its hidden artillery bunkers and anti-tank ditches. Post-war analysis credited the Mosquito with reducing D-Day casualties by 15%. But the stakes went deeper. In May 1944, Mosquitoes pinpointed V-1 launch sites in France. Their intel-guided RAF raids that destroyed 70% of the facilities before D-Day. Without those strikes, Hitler's vengeance weapons would have rained down on Normandy's beaches and the invasion fleet. A single V-1 hit on a landing craft packed with 200 troops could have turned the tide. By 1944, the Mosquito was the only Allied plane fast enough to intercept V-1 rockets. Pilots developed a lethal tactic, flying alongside the 400-mile-per-hour drones, nudging their wings to destabilize them. Mosquitoes downed 623 V-1s, one-third of all kills. Without the Mosquito, London's devastation could have been apocalyptic. The 2,400 V-1s that reached the city, out of 9,500 launched, killed 6,000 civilians. Triple that number and the Blitz's trauma would have reignited. Morale, Churchill's secret weapon, might have crumbled, pressuring Britain to negotiate. But the Mosquito's precision raids weren't just tactical, they were psychological warfare. When 18 Mosquitoes obliterated Gestapo headquarters in Copenhagen in 1945, they destroyed dossiers on 50,000 resistance fighters. In a world without the Mosquito, the Nazi occupation apparatus tightens its grip. Resistance networks collapse under relentless raids. D-Day loses its eyes and ears. Even the Amiens Prison raid's failure would have had cascading consequences. Of the 258 resistance fighters freed, 87 rejoined the fight, providing critical intel for the Normandy campaign. Their capture could have handed the Gestapo a treasure trove of Allied secrets. The Mosquito's legacy transcends World War II. Its wooden construction inspired the United States' Hughes H-4 Hercules, aka Spruce Goose, and the British Comet, the first jet airliner. More critically, its speed over armor philosophy shaped the F-104 Starfighter and SR-71 Blackbird. Without the Mosquito, aviation remains shackled to heavy armor and gun turrets. Stealth technology, which relies on speed and minimal radar cross-sections, stalls for decades. The Cold War's aerial chess match tilts in favor of brute force bombers like the B-36, slower, costlier, and deadlier in a nuclear stalemate. The Mosquito's true triumph wasn't in the battles it won, but the dogma it destroyed. It proved that ingenuity could trump tonnage, that a plane glued together by piano makers could outfly the Reich's finest. Remove it from history, and World War II becomes a slog of attrition. A war won by grinding, not genius. As de Havilland himself said, "We did not make it strong because it was wood. We made it wood because it was strong." The Mosquito was a manifesto, and without it, the sky loses its most daring poet. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to join us on the next historical dig. Until then, keep exploring the stories they didn't teach you in class.